Thanks, John. It's good to be here, and thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for making me so welcome. And I was quite interested in the little sanctity quest that you had at the beginning, John, and I thought to myself, here in Melbourne, no one commits any very serious sins, because I would have thought in the list of grave sins, the ones that you read out were all pretty venial, but I was happy to keep standing under those circumstances because none of them were important enough to cause me to drop out of the race. But look, it is good to be here, and I'm particularly pleased to be addressing a group of people where I'm just about the oldest person in the room, because when you're a politician, particularly a Liberal politician, mostly you're addressing quite aged groups of people, and the fact that so many young people are prepared to come together to talk about theology and Christian faith is very encouraging, and I want to congratulate you, John, and your team for bringing together people to talk about this topic. And the fact that all of you don't look like this is your first ever visit to the pub, the fact that you don't look like you're refugees from a monastery makes me very encouraged about the state of Catholicism here in the great city of Melbourne. Now, I've been asked to talk about God and Caesar, and it is very easy to get them a little bit jumbled up. I can remember years and years ago when I was a student for the priesthood, I was a pastoral assistant at the parish of Emu Plains in Western Sydney, at Our Lady of the Way parish in Western Sydney, and occasionally the parish priest would get me to say a few words after the gospel to save him having to preach a homily. And on this particular occasion I'd given what I thought was a terrific speech, and I was following people out after Mass, and I overheard two people talking to each other, and they said, you know, that young guy here in this parish, don't know about him at all. It wasn't a bad speech, but you know, he should be a bloody politician, not a priest. Anyway, a few years later I was in Parliament, and I was deputed by the then Prime Minister, John Howard, to go and represent the government at the opening of a Catholic school in Western Sydney. So I'm at this and I give what was a terrific speech, and I'm on the way out and I overheard these two people saying, you know, funny bloke, that guy. I reckon he should have been a bloody priest, not a bloody politician. So the point I'm trying to make is that anyone who takes religion seriously and who is interested in politics is almost bound to be accused of mixing religion and politics. And yet I don't believe I have mixed them up. Certainly I don't believe that I've mixed them up in ways which offend against the principles of separation of church and state, which we largely observe here in this country. Nevertheless, I can't deny, and I shouldn't deny, that one of the reasons I'm in politics is because when I was a kid I was lucky enough to have as my teachers the Jesuit order at St Ignatius College, and they gave me a very strong message that you should be, in the terms they used in those days, a man for others. And you can be a man for others in 1,000 different ways, but obviously one way in which you can be a man for others is to try to take some role of public leadership. And I suppose I'm vain enough to think that I should take a role of public leadership in honour of those Jesuits who taught me all those years ago. And I've got to say that I sometimes think they're a bit disappointed in me. I think they'd be a lot happier if I was in a different party and perhaps talking about different subjects sometimes, but nevertheless here I am, for better or for worse. There are, as you can imagine, good Christians in politics. They're the ones who talk about social justice and the need to avoid detention of boat people and so on, and there are bad Christians in politics. They're the ones who say abortion is a bad thing and we should try to do something about the abortion rate and to keep families together. And I'm probably more of a bad Christian than a good Christian in that sense. But while I think that the political party that I represent in Parliament has more often than not done a good job, and more often than not done a job which Christians ought to be comfortable with, I want to make it very clear that in politics your role is not to be a Christian as such, but your role is to be a good human being rather than an explicit Christian. When I look at the record of the Howard government, I can see a lot of things which I think decent Christian people ought to be happy with. Apart from the obvious, which all people would like preserving a strong economy, getting unemployment down, helping Australia to be respected in the wider world, and so on. The Howard government did things like provide additional support for traditional families, single income families with kids. It facilitated, through the Andrews Bill, the rejection of the Northern Territory euthanasia laws. It stipulated through law that marriage was between a man and a woman, and Prime Minister Howard was, to the best of my knowledge, the only elected Western leader of recent times who has said publicly that the abortion rate was too high and should come down, and to that end established a 24-hour pregnancy support counselling helpline and a Medicare item for pregnancy support counselling. So these are just a few things which the Howard government did, which I think good Christian people ought to be proud of and pleased about. But we never did anything on the basis of the Bible telling us or the Pope commanding us. Everything that we did, even though 9 of the 18 members of the last Howard cabinet were in one way or another public Catholics, we never did anything because we were Christians or because we were Catholics or because we thought there was a religious reason. We always did things because we thought there was a good human reason for doing it. And the beauty of what might broadly be described as Christian social teaching is that you don't need revelation and you don't need authority to support it. I think it was Cardinal Newman who once said that if truth and Catholicism seem to be in conflict, either it's not really true, it's not really Catholic, or there's no real conflict. And the beauty of all of those things, which the Howard government did, is that you didn't have to be a Christian, you didn't have to be Catholic to support them, but nevertheless, in important respects, they were on all fours with traditional social teaching. I want to say that the Howard government was often attacked for being less than Christian on 3 key issues, and I just want to briefly deal with them because I think it's important before this kind of an audience that we don't run away from those issues. The 3 issues are workplace relations, the treatment of boat people, and the Iraq War. And I want to say that on all of those issues, I think that the former government's position was morally justifiable, although a difficult position to justify. On workplace relations, I would have thought that the most important moral imperative is to try to ensure that as many as possible have got jobs. I mean, in the end, the fairest thing you can do for anyone in the workplace is to give that person the best possible chance of a job. Now, a lot of people attacked the Howard government over the years on workplace relations. They said that we were too market-oriented, that we were too deregulatory, that we allowed tough bosses to dispense with hard-won terms and conditions. And it's true, we did significantly deregulate. But in the course of significantly deregulating, we helped to get unemployment down from almost 11% to 4%. So that's about 600,000 people who went from being unemployed to being employed, at least in part because of the workplace policies of the Howard government. Now, it's all very well saying that the Industrial Relations Commission should not have lost some of its role and authority, that those very prescriptive awards, often running to hundreds, even thousands of pages, should not have been as easy to in a sense, bypass as they were. It's all very well saying that, but the corollary of that is that you've really got to also accept the slower jobs growth that would have been in place if we hadn't taken the steps that we did.